Okay, now we will call the March workshop meeting to order. Would you stand for the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Kate, would you do the roll call, please?
Councilwoman Allen.
Here.
Councilwoman Hogan DePew.
Here.
Councilman Hewitt. Councilman Paddock.
Here.
Supervisor Baden.
Here. Okay, our first order of business is an interview with Isabel Vinton. If you can unmute yourself there, Isabel.
Hello, everyone.
How are you? Welcome. Isabel is interviewing with the board for the alternate position to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And welcome. Thank you for joining us. Start out, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in being the alternate to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Sure. Well, hello, everyone, and thanks so much for the invitation today. So my husband, Jesse Goldfarb, and I have lived in the area for about 4 to 5 years now. I've been working at the area at the Hudson Valley Seed Company for the last 4 years. And my husband, Jesse, has a tributary farm in Allergerville. We moved to the area originally because my mother-in-law, Wendy Hollander, is a botanical illustrator, and she's also in the area. So we've grown to love the area. We love living here. And we have a lot of family based here now too. And, since living here, we've noticed, changes happening, interesting changes, but changes that affect, definitely related to the Zoning Board of Appeals, whether it's with the subdivisions or short-term rentals, the establishment of new businesses, like the new grocery that we're seeing in Accord, people using their premises for different purposes. And I'm kind of just being interested in these changes and keen to get involved a little bit more, I guess. I have done some volunteering, but I've been thinking for a while that I would like to get more directly involved in the town. And I recognize that I don't have a lot of experience, and the alternate position seemed a really great way to learn a little bit more about the town, to understand the changes that we're seeing and how they impact our zoning laws and regulations. And get more involved generally.
Okay. Let me pass it off to the other board members. If you have any questions, B. Hogan DePew, one of our board members, was the chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals for quite a number of years and on the board for even more. So B, why don't I let you go first?
Thanks, Mike. Isabel, do you have any idea what the Zoning Board of Appeals does in relation to the town?
Well, I know that, different requests related to subdivisions and I guess just general zoning laws are put to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And obviously, cases that kind of contravene, I guess, specific zoning laws at the time would be put to the zoning board for discussion and to understand, if there may be exceptions or what changes might be made, or if there's kind of further information that needs to be gathered in relation to the change or request that's being made.
Just a bit of information for you. The zoning board doesn't do subdivisions. What they do is they are a quasi-judicial board, which is allowed to vary the law. And when you vary the law, give a variance, there are two types of variances, use and area. When you give a variance, the variance goes with the land. In other words, if John Smith owns it today and John Smith's is who's coming for the variance, if Jane Jones buys it later, the variance still stays with her, just so you're aware. So your decisions on the board stay for a while.
Okay.
And do you see yourself having, even as an alternate, do you see yourself having any problems making decisions on people's properties? Following the law and things?
No, definitely not.
Okay. That's all I have. I just wanted to
Yeah, I
let you
appreciate that.
know what it does.
Yeah, I appreciate the extra information. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Mike, that's all
Okay,
that's all I have.
thank you, B. I
Can you ask-
appreciate that. And thank you for explaining that all. Aaron, do you have any questions? Okay, Adam.
Isabel, thanks for joining us tonight. I spent a year as the alternate on the planning board, and I think the most difficult part of it was being prepared every single meeting for input, and then not being allowed to share until there was an emergency. Somebody didn't show up, or they had an emergency, and then it was go time. Do you feel like that you have that kind of patience, preparation, and then expediency to be the alternate?
Thanks for that. That was actually something that Mike explains at the beginning. And, as it's clear, I still have a lot of kind of information gathering and learning to do. So I think I would generally just see it as a really good experience to, prepare for each session and get ready for it. And if I wasn't able to contribute, which I understand could be, a pretty long time, because it's obviously a quorum of 3 that's needed. And that will be the majority of cases. But in that case, I see it as a really good opportunity to have prepared, to learn a little bit more about the process, and hopefully attend the meeting and just learn by, kind of being more of a kind of silent witness, but still kind of being engaged in the process. So I don't think I would find that frustrating. I think I would find it a really helpful learning opportunity.
I know I did. I was scared to death when I went on there of what I didn't know, and you can learn a lot in the course of a year. So again, thank you for your interest.
So, building on a little bit of what all the other board members have said. So, as Adam alluded to, and you and I spoke about on the phone, the position doesn't and require a lot of patience. When you are actually meeting in person, you will feel a bit ostracized because you don't sit at the main table with the other board members. And we've started this to help people resist the urge to take part in the discussion. So you will have your own little area to be set up in, where you will be able to lay out your paperwork and take your own notes and observe, but you are not a part of the active discussion, even if you think you have something to add to the discussion, because unless you are an actually seated board member, you're a person kind of in waiting, and you're there in the emergency situation when either a quorum isn't there, or if somebody is going to be out for a period of time for whatever reason, whether it be a work or an illness or something, then you might be seated. Or if there's a conflict of interest, say somebody has an interest in a project and they can't, or a relative or something, and they can't be on the board, then you would step in. So it will never be a case where you bounce in and out. And once you are seated on an application, we have crafted the law so you stay on the board for the duration of that application. That's for both for you and for the board and for the applicant. So there's a consistency. Otherwise, you might be on the meeting one month, and then somebody else another month, and then back to you. So as we all said, it does endure a lot of degree of patience. You are required to do 4 hours of training a year. In this day and age with online training, it's really easy to knock it out. You can do it at your own pace and your own time. If you do more, you can bank your hours for future years. And that's really about it. You are paid for your meeting attendance. If you attend, you are paid a $30 a month stipend. It's not a lot of money, but it pays for your time, and you're essentially your gas money, because in preparation for the meeting, many of the members will drive by the property, look around, observe what the neighborhood is like, because much of your decisions are decided based on the characteristics of a neighborhood. If what's being asked is out of place or wouldn't be a good waiver of the law, then you have to take that, the neighborhood a bit into consideration. So, that's about it. You do become a public officer, and if you have the ability, if you go online and Google search New York State Public Officers Law, it is probably longer than you ever will want to read, but it outlines what that means. And you are required to take an oath of office, and you do become a representative of the town. Even though you're an appointed official, not an employee, you do become a representative of the town with that position. All that is probably more daunting than it really is, but I just like to make people aware that you do have to abide by the public officers law and the things that are in that law. And is there anything for any of the other board members I'm forgetting about, or Kate? If I'm
Like, I just
forgetting
wanted
anything?
to say they got a wonderful $5 raise this year. I mean, that's,
It's been $25 for a very long time, and we raised it to 30 this year. We finally get caught up with the cost of living. So, we will be discussing this, and next Thursday is our next board meeting, so we would be doing an appointment at that meeting. And I would be back in contact with you either way to let you know. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you making yourself available tonight, and good luck.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Really
Great.
appreciate the community. Thanks
Have
a
a
lot.
good night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, next, moving on to the agenda is Ashley Sweeney, our rec director. And would like to talk to the board. You're sideways, Ashley. There you go. You can go ahead and unmute if you haven't. Great.
Hi.
How are you? Thank you for
Good.
being here. Wanted to, Ashley and I, for the board, Ashley and I have been talking about the summer program. A few other towns are starting to take registrations and are discussing possibilities of programs. Ashley and I, maybe 2 weeks ago, had kind of an informal discussion about it. She's done some more research with things like the bus company, and I wanted to have her come talk to the whole board to kind of fill you in on our conversation, get your input on thoughts about it, and either kind of, give her a little more direction of what we think we can do. All this obviously is pending governor's orders, and all this is changeable day to day, depending on what may or may not change. But so moving forward with where things stand now, and let me turn it over to Ashley, and she can kind of fill you in on what we're thinking about.
Hi, everyone. So basically, I wrote everything out. So if I could just kind of go over what I have here, and then maybe we could discuss it after, that would be great. So I'm here to talk about summer program. I guess I'm hoping that the board will allow the recreation department to have a summer program for the 2021 season. Obviously, due to the pandemic, the plan will be different than previous years. However, I'm confident that myself and my team can create a program that will be successful as well as safe as possible. With that being said, I'd like to present you with an outline for how I think the program could look. That's obviously up for discussion. If there's any suggestions, we can talk about it, but this is just a general outline. Okay, so I would like the program to be Mondays and Fridays, 8:30 to 1 o'clock. That's something we already do. That's how we've always done it. And those are the days that we're on premises. So I'm thinking that we would still be at the town park because that is outside and it's been successful. So that would be Mondays and Fridays, 8:30 to 1 o'clock. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, I'm proposing 8:30 to 3 o'clock. Typically, we did 8:30 to 4:30. However, I would like to, on our trip days, we'll try to go to outdoor venues in order to be safer. And the longer amount of time makes it harder if something were to come up to kind of find an alternate plan. Okay, so I'm thinking that the program will only be open to Rochester residents because we have to take less kids than we would in other years because of busing. I called for a student and they will only allow right now 20 people on the bus. That's not 20 kids. So that's 19 kids and maybe one adult. That's just, a guess, but 20 people are allowed on the bus. They can't put people right behind the bus driver. Those are just the regulations that they have for right now. The bus will cost roughly $65 per hour plus tolls. Mike and I have been discussing busing, and we're thinking that maybe it would be ideal to have 2 buses so that we could accommodate approximately 30 kids per session. Now, when I say session, I'm talking about I would like to do a session in July and a session in August, both 3 weeks. So you sign up for 1 session. That way we can accommodate, hopefully, if all goes as planned, at least 60 kids for the summer. In past years, I believe 2019, we accommodated close to 70 kids all together. They were allowed to come 1 week at a time. And so all together it was 70 different kids. So I don't think that's too bad. If we can have 60, I think that'd be great. Okay, so 2 3-week sessions. We would only visit outdoor locations. So I'm talking parks, walkways, beaches, farms, pools. And this is obviously, pending they're going to be open and allowing groups to visit. But we are doing research into that now. I have Bethany made some calls today. I haven't been able to talk to her about it, but she's calling around to see if people are willing to take on groups. We will make adjustments according to inclement weather. We would make adjustments accordingly. We had to do that in past years too, because when the building was under renovation and we were at the town park, there were a couple days where we had some pretty heavy thunderstorms, and parents understand that. And they would be made aware in the beginning before the program that these things may happen. And I think that one of the, I guess, good things of the pandemic is that people have learned to adapt to situations that come up. So masks will always be worn unless eating or maintaining social distance. On days when it's raining, we will have to figure out how we're going to keep them distance from each other. But I do think that the CDC just changed the guidelines also from 6 feet to 3 feet, but I will look into that. The program, on the days that the program is restricted to the town park, we will do organized activities the entire day. I'm thinking at picnic tables, small groups, organized crafts, and then some organized free play where maybe we'll have a group at the park, maybe we'll have a group at the basketball court, maybe we'll have a group at the, the baseball field. So we'll keep them separate. We'll do our best to keep everybody away from each other and, what we have to do. COVID paperwork will be filled out each morning at drop off. And I will also do research into that and see what needs to be filled out. And Mike and you guys probably will approve that paperwork before it's, before we use it. Temperature checks will have to be performed daily. We will need to purchase thermometers. A syllabus will put into place for COVID procedures and followed meticulously. I will research what needs to be done in order to operate as safely as possible. And like I said before, of course, these documents will be approved by Mike before they're used. Staffing, because we have less kids than we normally do, I am thinking that we will only need approximately 3 counselors for 30 kids. That is within ratio. And also Bethany and I will be able to help out on trip days and stuff like that. When we need to go, we will go. I have certain 3 counselors in mind who all work within the Rondout Valley School District. And so they're used to COVID procedures. And I believe they all are already vaccinated. Registration, I still haven't completely ironed that out, but I do know that I want to put it off till probably the end of May or June, because I'm hoping that by that time, regulations may change and we may be able to accept more children. But I do have to iron that out and figure out exactly how we're going to do that. I talked to Bethany and Rita about possibly having people call and make an appointment to come and register. But I really got to think about that a little bit. Okay, so as far as pricing goes, I thought for each session, to hold your spot, you would put down $100 deposit. The cost for the entire session would be $375. That's $125 per week, which is what we've already done. So they would put the deposit down and they would get the spot. However, I don't want to collect the registration fee, the rest of the registration fees, until the week that they attend the program, in case we have, God forbid, we have a case and we have to shut the program down. I don't want to, we won't have to reimburse then, and we can figure that out. Also, if we do have a case, I have to look into that, but we would probably have to end the session. And again, this is something parents will be made aware of in the beginning. So that was just the last thing I was going to say. In the event that someone tests positive, it is likely that the rest of the session will have to close. If that happens, participants will be reimbursed all monies besides their deposit, and we will follow CDC and health department guidelines to the best of our ability in the event that this happens. And that's all I have for right now.
Great. Let me open it up to the board if you have any questions or thoughts on it, and then maybe Mary Lou can chime in a little bit regarding the governor's executive orders and how this may or may not apply. And then I can talk to you a little bit about the financial. I've done a little bit of investigation into what this would entail for us. So first, any board members have any questions for Ashley? First, thank you, Ashley. Really appreciate all the legwork you've done. So
I had a couple questions. One, Ashley, it sounds like you were very thoughtful and thorough, and this sounds like you thought of everything. I think my questions actually just stem from me not knowing 100% how the program works. So I just wanted to confirm that a kid can only register for one of the sessions. They can't do both.
Yes, and that is not something that we typically do. Typically, they can register for 1 week at a time, but I do feel like this is better because, like I said, if there is a case or something, we can close the session, but we can have another session, and it also just reaches more kids in the community.
Yeah. And then,
Erin, normally it's a week by week. So because of vacations and things, it's 6 weeks total. We do 3 weeks, we take a week off, and then we do another 3 weeks. But you can register on a week by week basis for as many of those 6 weeks as you want to. And typically over this entire course, we service about 75 individual kids. Some will only come a week or two, some will come all 6 weeks. So part of the reason is, as Ashley said, we thought this way with 2 buses, and part of the reason, I'm not sure if Ashley mentioned this, that we're going with 30 and not the 19 per session and only 15, is that 15 per bus, excuse me, because if we go higher, then we get to the break-even point where we need another counselor. And to keep it more manageable, we thought that it would give us, keeping it at 30 students per session, 15 on each bus, allows us a little bit of flexibility. And sometimes too, we also get volunteers, parents who come along and help as chaperones, or it also helps to be able to let us put all the adults that are working for the town on the buses themselves. Otherwise, they would have to follow along behind in personal cars, and then we'd have to be reimbursing mileage and things. So,
right, we won't be able to get one. If we did 1 bus, we'd probably only be able to get 1 counselor on the bus. And
yeah, that makes sense. And it sounds like the 3 weeks was a happy medium between some students do some weeks, some do all, some do one. So it sounds very thoughtful. And then the deposit, is that a refundable deposit? Like if you did have to cancel the session, or is it a non-refundable deposit?
Typically we do non-refundable, but that could be something that's up to you guys. Typically the deposit is not usually that much. It's usually only, it's 150 for the entire summer for 6 weeks, typically. So it's $25 per week in a normal year. But so that's something that's up to you.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
the other thing, Aaron, we have always done is if another person takes the slot, then we refund the deposit back to the original person. But because we have to do these bookings and oftentimes have to commit costs ahead of time, that's why the deposit is usually non-refundable. But we have never, ever in my memory had to not pay somebody back, because we almost always are able to fill their slot with somebody else.
I was just thinking in the case that of a COVID case where the session itself would have to be
Oh,
canceled.
well, if the session itself had to be canceled, then I think we would refund everybody's money for the weeks. And I think what Ashley was presenting, and I apologize, I was looking up something, I missed a little bit of what you said there. They would pay the first deposit, and then the rest would be due the week.
The Monday starting the week, yes.
Monday starting the week. So if we have to cancel a session, it would only be if we had to cancel it before the first week that the deposit would, because the deposit becomes your first week's pay.
Yeah, it holds your spot essentially too.
So,
Yeah, I think part of maybe my only suggestion at all, because I think this is really, really thorough, is to think about having a protocol for what we would do in the case that we have to cancel the session, or you're in the session for 2 weeks and then we have to cancel it. If we come up with some sort of refund policy or prorated policy, I think that might be good to think about that ahead.
okay,
But that's it.
Got it.
thank you.
Nice work.
Thanks, Aaron.
B, Adam?
No, Ashley, you and the department, great job as always. Really well thought out. I know there's some bugs to work out, but it looks very positive.
Thanks, Adam.
Mary Lou, can you add anything in terms of the governor's orders and anything we haven't thought about?
Yeah, last year, the state did end up allowing day camps, and that's where we fall. So this year, they're even allowing overnight camps. So I can't imagine there's a problem with day camps. Last year, they did set up certain regulations for the day camps. I don't know if they'll amend them this year or not. So, they're not out yet, and the overnight camps aren't out yet either. So we just have to watch that. On the 3 feet, Ashley, I know they said that for schools, I haven't looked for camps, so I don't know if you have.
Yeah, I haven't, but I will look into that. And obviously we want to err on the side of caution. So we're okay with the 6 feet. I'm just more worried about a situation where it's like inclement weather and we're outside under the pavilion, separating them, when they're like eating their lunch or something without a mask.
Right. So, whoever knows, so many of the regulations make perfect sense. And there's a lot that have us scratching our heads, right? I think we all go through that. So to me, it makes sense that if they can be 3 feet apart indoors in a school, that should work for outdoors even better. But hey, I'm a lawyer. I'm not a scientist. And yeah, so be ready for new regulations and work with the Ulster County Department of Health, because they'll have all of that. And if they'll let you go on a really long trip to the Trevor Zoo, do that.
I love it there.
Oh,
I love the Trevor Zoo. And I didn't think about that. So I'm glad you just said that.
it's like my favorite place.
Yeah.
And that's all. If you have questions as you're getting this all together, just give me a call. I think it sounds great.
Thank you.
I really do. You did a good
Great.
job.
So what Ashley and I discussed is normally we do registrations earlier, and some towns are already starting that. I think we're thinking about waiting till after Memorial Day because we'll have a better idea and picture of where everything stands. But I wanted to get a general sort of feel from the board tonight. I think it sounds like I know my answer, but I wanted to give Ashley the go ahead to start looking at venues, to start planning this a little bit more. What it means in terms of the transportation is our transportation budget would double. Even with the shorter hours, I did rough math, and we have budgeted, I believe it's $7,500 for transportation. We would be more in the neighborhood of around 15,000. But bear in mind that anytime we go to a state park, and Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a state park, it might even be county parks.
Yep, it's state parks, and
Okay.
are eligible for transportation grants.
So we can get transportation grants that are really a matter of as simple as turning in receipts. It's you reimburse the cost of your transportation when you go to a state park in these programs, and we took advantage of that 2 years ago to great success. So if they go to Lake Taconic, which is one of the places they go to, that's a state park. If they go to the walkway over the Hudson, that's a state park. So we can get reimbursed for the transportation for those trips 100%. So some of that cost will be defrayed by that. Also, if we don't need the fourth counselor that we've had in the past, sorry, Mary Lou, Mike just appeared in the sky behind you.
He's an angel.
We will save some costs there too. So I don't think the $7,500 addition is going to be a great impediment. So I think we can certainly work through that challenge and make this work. We also probably, by going to parks and things and not dealing with the admission charges that we have at things like museums and things like that, is we probably will save some funding there that we can move toward the transportation. So I'm confident we can make this work with the 2 bus idea. I think the 30 per session sounds like a very smart, reasonable idea. So I don't think we really need a resolution. I just wanted, if anybody had any major concerns, I wanted them brought up. And otherwise, I think if with the board's okay, I'll tell Ashley to continue on with her research and just keep me informed, and I'll keep the board informed, and we'll circle back to this in a month and see where we stand on all cases.
Mike, it's obvious to me that she's thought this through on every level. She doesn't miss much when she
Yep.
plans things.
Yep.
So I don't see a problem.
Great.
I agree with Mary Lou, we don't have the camp criteria yet, but I think she's pretty much got herself settled on that too, whatever she has to do.
Great. Okay. So Chris, I apologize. Do you have anything you want to add on this?
Nope. Sounds very nice. Thank you.
Okay. Great. So we will move on to the next agenda item then. Thank you, Ashley.
Thanks for having me. Have a good night.
Next, moving on to, and Jeff, I muted you because there was a little background noise there. So you'll have to unmute *6, I think it is. So first is,
how's that?
Yep, we got you. So first is
Okay.
talking about the Millhook Bridge. We received 5 bids. I'll read them just so they're into the record here. This is for the demolition and removal of the existing steel beam bridge with asphalt deck and the installation of a precast, pre-stressed concrete bridge deck beams, steel double box beam bridge rails, and modify the existing concrete abutment and blacktop resurfacing of approaches to the Millhook Bridge. The 5 quotes were Parrot Enterprises, Inc., $134,431. Jory Excavating, Inc., $133,000. Alpine Construction, LLC, $197,000, excuse me. Kingston Equipment Rental, $132,500. and H. Osterhout Excavating, $194,940. The resolution you have already in front of you. Jeff has reviewed the bids, Medenbach and Eggers has reviewed the bids, and Kate has confirmed that they all did the bid bond and the non-collusive bidding certification. So the recommendation from Medenbach and Eggers and from Jeff Fry is that we initiate, so I'll read the therefore section of the resolution. The Town of Rochester Town Board authorizes the town supervisor to initiate contract with Kingston Equipment Rental, 78 Stone Road, West Hurley, New York, 12491. The contractor shall furnish necessary labor, material, tools, and equipment to install precast bridge deck, bridge rail, repair abutment, and blacktop resurfacing at approaches per plans and specs at Mill Hook Road, Accord, New York, at a total cost not to exceed $132,500. The contractor shall perform all the work under this agreement in accordance with the plan and specifications as provided to the contractor in the bid specifications. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second for discussion?
I'll second.
Okay. Jeff, you want to add anything?
Well, basically, anybody that's not familiar with Kingston Equipment Rental, they're also known as Baker Brothers. So more people know them as Baker Brothers than they do Kingston Equipment Rental, and they're very reputable, have a lot of experience in this type of. Actually, this is going to be a piece of cake for them because this is easier than what they're normally used to doing. But probably most people are more familiar with Baker Brothers than they are to Kingston Equipment Rental. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yep. So I have a motion and a second. If there's no other questions or discussion, we do have to talk how we're going to pay for this. I did look up in highway fund balance, there's in spendable format, there's approximately $280,000. We could use fund balance from highway. There also is in spendable format in general fund. I don't have the number in front of me, but there is more than that. So we could also pay for part of it out of general fund balance, transfer it to highway, or we could take out a bond. The bond obviously comes with added costs of it's about $1,000 to take out the bond. And then there's going to be a year's worth of interest, even if we pay it all off at the end of the year. The benefit of that is we could pay some of it now and some of it later and spread the cost over 2 years, but we do have the money in fund balance. So there's several options. It's not a sizable bond. $150,000 is not a really big bond. So there's many options, and it's whatever people are comfortable with. So on how we do that, but just to award the contract, award the bid, I mean, and to let me initiate the contract. If we can vote on that resolution first, then we can talk about payment. So, so Kate, I have a motion and a second. Can you do a roll call vote?
Councilman Allen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hagen DePew,
Aye for the contract.
Councilman Hewitt.
Aye.
We lost Councilman Paddock and Supervisor Baden.
Aye. Okay, so that covers that. What's the board's feelings on payment, on how to pay for it? And Jeff, maybe you should weigh in too. I don't want to spend all your fund balance on you in 1 year. So anybody have any preferences?
Mike, my question is, can we get a 2-year bond, and what's the interest rate?
I don't know what the interest rate is. What I'll do is get all this information for us for next week. What the bond is a year bond that you can renew up to 5 years.
5 times.
So we could take out the bond now. The money then will not come due till a year from now. If we make a prepayment on the bond, that will just lessen the amount of interest. So if we took out 150,000, and the reason I'm saying 150 is the
That was
Medenbach and Eggers cost, we have about, you just signed bills today for
Yes,
about 9,000, 9 to 10, I believe it was.
I would say
total.
closer to 10.
Yep.
Yeah, it was closer to
And
10.
Barry estimates another 2,000 on top of that.
Well,
So I rounded it up to 150. That would be 145. I gave ourselves a little bit of excess just in case. So we could bond for the 150 now and pay off part of it this year and then pay off the rest next year. We could use fund balance and just pay it all off now. Like I said, the difference is the interest for a year on that amount of money would probably be at about the $6,000 range. I'm only estimating that on our other bonds, which is about 9,000 a year. And those bonds are in the neighborhood of 2/3, double this to a little bit less than that. One was 200 and some thousand and one is 300 and some thousand. And
do you remember the
interest
interest on those, Mike?
I don't remember the rate. And I know the interest rates have gone down. We don't have to decide this right now. I just wanted to get input. If everybody said, we'll just do it out of fund balance, then I wouldn't even pursue it. I'll find out the interest rates and find out the actual cost and bring this to the board next week. We're not going to we're initiating contracts, so you'll have to approve the contract next week anyway. So it's not slowing us down in any way. I just wanted to get a feel for what direction the board wanted to go with it.
Just out of curiosity, the 132.5 to Baker Brothers, is that paid in thirds? Like a third up front, a third in work, and a third upon completion?
I don't know, because once we award it to them, we'll ask them to provide a contract. So our bid did not stipulate any payment requirements in it. So they will present to us what they're wishing for. Jeff, do you have any idea of what the normal would be? Would it be half up front or?
Yeah, they're probably going to ask for half up front, and then of course when it's completed by the date that's listed,
right?
And so forth, and then the other half would be paid. But that's the normal. But I honestly don't know what Baker Brothers would come up with. It's hard to say.
Bear in mind, this is only about a 2-month project because they have to be done by somewhere in June. The
18th, I think.
June 18th is the day that
Yeah.
sticks in my head is the completion date. So, so they're going to start the work and probably be done in 5 to 6 weeks max.
Can I just remind you that if you do go with a bond, you can't just vote to go for a bond. You have to have that bond in front of you next week.
Correct.
All right.
Okay.
So
Good to know. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, I can ask the, I'll get the interest rates and but that's good information. Thank you.
That was part of the reason, Mike, I was asking how we were going to pay it.
Yeah.
It would give us a little time to get a bond if we paid. Jeff said half. Well, I was thinking a third, and a third.
Well, we can always pay it out of fund balance now and do the bond and reimburse ourselves with the bond amount too. There is that. So the money is available right now. It's just it's a matter of whether we spread it out over 2 years or whether we pay it off in 1 year.
Can you get us the figures for what's in the fund balance and what would be the balance if
Sure,
we
it's
took
in
this all out?
last year's AUD, which is where I looked, but I'll send it to you.
No, I'm just saying that way we've all got it in front of us and can make a decision.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay, any other questions on that? If not, we'll move on to the next item for, this is the Boyce Mill Bridge. I sent all of you out a proposal of a contract from CT Mail. You remember we applied under the Ulster County Transportation Council program, and sorry, let me just see if, oh, let me get Adam back in the room. I'm sorry. Sorry about that, Adam.
No problem. I got locked out. I'm back online
I
though.
saw there was a waiting room, but it's the people coming for the next meeting, the next session, and I didn't realize you were in there. My apologies.
Okay, it was such a nice day outside. I wanted to stay outside for a minute, but it got chilly. I walked upstairs, disconnected myself, and got
Well,
locked out. My
Well, there
apologies.
you go. That's okay. So we're talking about the Boyce Mill Bridge. We applied for that grant. They sent back a response in the email. I forwarded the email to all of you in the packet. Essentially, they are concerned that we may have underpriced the project. The total amount between our bridge and the Ulster County bridge that were put up for that money exceeds the amount of the cost of what they have available. The Ulster County Bridge alone by itself is more than, so they're pretty much told that they're out of luck. So the money exists and we are asking for less than what exists, but their concern is that we might not have priced it properly. Admittedly, we did do a bit of a bare bones treatment of it in order to hopefully get that money. We did not know when we applied for that the state was going to get their act together and actually put a Bridge New York grant out. We all fully expected that would not happen this year, given the state's financial situation. But lo and behold, in February, they put out an announcement. There is a new application period for Bridge New York. The county would like us to try the Bridge New York first. The benefits are that it is 95% refundable by the county, and we only pay 5%. Under the UCTC plan, we would pay 20% and they would pay 80%. So that's benefit number one. Benefit number two is it requires a little greater scrutiny of analysis of the bridge itself for the Bridge New York in comparison to the Ulster County plan. And based on that, we likely will increase our request to address a little bit more of the abutments and potentially end up with a higher expense project. But if we're getting 95% of the funding back, well, in the long run, we'll spend less money and get a better bridge. So Jeff and I spoke with CT Mail, the consultant that we are working with. They have offered their opinion that for an additional $2,000, we paid them $3,100 to do the original grant. An additional $2,000, they would have to come back down on site one more time. They want to do some actual testing of the abutments. I think they want to do a boring it's what's called a piled stone abutment. The county is very aware of it because they were involved in the building of it back in the 80s. And that is part of what the concern was brought up. So tonight I'm asking for a resolution that we apply for the Bridge New York grant. And the county has indicated that the funding will still be there available for us. If we don't get the Bridge New York grant, they will fund our bridge. So to me, it's a no-brainer, but
Mike, what are the odds on getting this Bridge New York?
It's hard to say. There's for the Mid-Hudson region, there's $16.9 million allocated. Who knows? Because we are up against greater competition. We're not up against one other bridge. But bear in mind, it's a $2,000 gamble to get back probably in the neighborhood of 5% of 1.5 million is not very much money compared to 20% of $1 million is 200,000, and the other is about 75,000. So we can get a lot more bridge, and we have a fallback in that if we don't get the funding, the bridge, the UCTC money is still there, and they're saying that they will fund us. So we may actually, out of this review, determine that we do need a little bit more expensive bridge, but even then, we'll still get the UCTC funding. We'll just have to spend a little bit more money but it's still cheaper than us spending $1.5 million building a new bridge straight out of our own pockets. So that's all I have to say on it. Jeff, do you want to add anything?
No, Mike, you covered everything.
Okay.
So we're good to go.
Any other questions by other board members? Okay, so this is the recommended resolution. Upon recommendation of the highway superintendent and town supervisor, the town board authorizes the town supervisor to sign a contract between CT Mail Associates Engineering, Surveying Architecture, Landscape Architecture, and Geology, DPC, 50 Century Hill Drive, Latham, New York, 12110, and the town of Rochester for engineering services to prepare and submit funding application to the New York State Department of Transportation for federal surface transportation funding to be made available under the 2020-2022 Bridge New York program to facilitate the design and replacement of the Boyce Mill Bridge, a town-maintained bridge located in the town of Rochester. The cost of such service shall be a lump sum in the amount of $2,000, including any direct reimbursable expenses. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, Kate, roll call vote.
Councilwoman Anawen,
Aye.
Councilman Hagen DePew,
Aye.
Councilman Hewitt,
Aye.
Councilman Paddock,
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
Aye. Okay, I will get that contract to them and we'll get them working on that. Thank you very much. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron and Jeff to talk about the transfer station.
Jeff, do you want to go? Or you want me to go?
Go ahead, Aaron. You have the floor. It's all yours.
Okay, so Jeff and I have been in close contact over the last month since he's taken over as our transfer station department head. In that time, you guys know we onboarded a new laborer and we're still utilizing Davey at the transfer station, who's in grounds. We've been talking about next steps, how to get to the next level, how to keep this momentum going of improving the transfer station. And Jeff, myself, and Mike have all communicated about a few key things that we'd like to sort of present to the board that I think will need board approval. The first is, and the biggest one, and Mike was really advocating for this, and Jeff and I agree, that we think we should very soon open the transfer station for a fourth day of the week. The proposed day would be on Thursdays. We feel that this will alleviate the clogs where a lot of it's very busy. It's very challenging for the staff to manage. Last Saturday, there was a line of cars all the way down Airport Road. So we feel like this would be good. So that was the first item. The second is that we'd like to, or Jeff would like to move the newest labor position that we hired, which is a 24-hour position. He would like that to be a 32-hour-a-week position. Basically, the idea being that laborers will have hours that match the open hours of the transfer station. So that would be Tuesday. The schedules would be Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The fourth or the third item is so that employee is still training on some of the more higher level type operations. So they're still in training, but Jeff would also like to start the process of hiring the third labor position, so that as soon as that person is really well trained, we can get that third person in, get them trained, and then Jeff can start to transition Davey out of the transfer station so that he can start doing the grounds work, which is what his job is. So that would be basically the timeline for that would be next month. Those are the biggest sort of items. There's also that position would the request for that would be that it would be a 32-hour a week labor position, again, so that there would be 3 laborers staffing the transfer station for the 4 days. And if there were downtime, if there were slow days where they didn't need all 3, then there would be a list of tasks that would be that one person could work on, so that some of that work that's not just staffing the transfer station could potentially get done. The next 3 items are, a couple weeks ago, Jeff and I met with his sign rep to get some talk about updating the signs. You guys probably know there's not really any good signage there, posting the hours, where the bins are, and just directional signs. And one thing that has come up is just, we'd like to print the hours, the days and the hours on those signs. So, obviously, if we are open on Thursdays, we'd want to know that before we print the signs. And then also the idea has come up that, the staff right now is scheduled to work 7:30 to 4, and the transfer station's open 7:30 to 4. So that's a challenging logistical thing. So one idea that Jeff supported is if we print on the sign that the transfer station closes at 4, but the last car is admitted at 3:45. That way the residents are really clear that they should be coming in a few minutes before the transfer station is actually closing. Then it gives the staff there enough time to make sure that they're closing up, getting all the cars out, and doing so without feeling rushed or overwhelmed. And I think that'll improve relationships with people using it. Then the other idea, and the transfer station used to open at 8. We now will open at 7:30. I sort of leave that in Jeff's sort of advice on what he thinks we should do for the opening time. But we just want to make sure that that is all good before we print those signs. Then the next thing is, since the scales were removed, we haven't updated any of the reporting procedures. And while the daily reports are still getting run, we're not tracking our waste in the same way that we used to be able to do when we had the scale. It's sort of a long thing that I could go into with you guys individually if you want to hear more about it. But one thing that Jeff and I talked about is sort of moving the transfer station into a more digital record keeping model, which would mean the idea of, while people are coming and bringing their waste, they're actually getting the transactions are getting recorded digitally while that's happening, so that the payments get recorded accurately and they don't have to spend this hour and a half in the middle of the day trying to get these reports done. I investigated a lot of options with, again, I talked to Jeff first. He really supports this idea. I looked into a lot of options, and I think the one that actually would work out the best would be utilizing Municipay, which is the service that the clerk's office uses to accept credit cards. That it's a free service that allows municipalities to accept credit cards. They pass a fee on to the person using the credit card. The nice thing about Municipay is that they can set up a login for the transfer station. Again, it's all free, where you could accept any form of payment, including credit cards. And again, the person paying would need to know that they're paying a fee to use their credit card. But the reporting that comes with Municipay is very, very good. And it was the sort of most elegant way that we could get something up and running quickly without having to spend a lot of money up front and see how it goes. So that's another thing, is that if we did want to go that route, I do believe the board would need to approve the credit card payments for the transfer station. And I've spoken, the other nice thing that this would do is our clerk's office would actually be able to log in and see from the back end. They would be able to see a digital daily report. And they'd be, of course, just looking at credit card and check transactions, but they'd be able to see that and get started on entering those in before they're actually receiving the whole packet of so I think it would really help the workflow overall from department to department. And that's about it. There were some other things that Jeff and I talked about that he'd like to do that have to do with just the internal management that I think are really great. And I think he's doing a really good job. And I'm really glad that he took on this new role as being our transfer station department head, because I think we're moving in a really good direction.
Thank you, Aaron. So Jeff, do you want to add anything on that?
Excuse me. Yeah, basically, I think probably because I've been over there just every day the transfer station has been open, Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday. I have been over there many days, on Saturday, some days closed, open to close. And what I've witnessed, I think probably it would be best, of course, the 345, no cars after 345 is a good idea, because I can tell you that cars come in there at 4, they want to come in there at 3:59, 4 o'clock, and they want to spend the day in there and sightsee and God knows what else they want to do when they're in there. And then the next thing you know, everybody's standing around. The one day I told all of them they could go home, and I stood there till 4:15, so the last people could go out, because obviously I can't go up there and tell them I'd like them to leave. But, it puts a lot of pressure on them as they're standing there. They put in a long day. I think maybe at the front end of it, instead of 7:30, maybe we could go 7:45 to 3:45, because I'll tell you, if you don't get there, and it puts pressure on them to get there in the morning, if you don't get there by 20 after, there's cars waiting by the gate already. They'll open the gate for you, or the gate's already open. So if they know how to unlock it. So I think it's put less pressure on having to race to get there to be open by 7:30, because like I said, you have to be there 15 minutes before your start time at least to accommodate the traffic that's already waiting at the gate for you. And as soon as you open the gate to let yourself in, they're following right behind you. So technically you haven't even punched in yet, and you've already got cars at the window. So they could be there by 7, no later than 7:30 or so, but open up at 7:45, give them some breathing room. Is what I see as far as that goes. And then Aaron and I had discussed with the 2 laborers we have now, and then the third one to have designated jobs for them. I think it would be much easier for them to realize that every single day they will have certain tasks that they have to do. It'll make it easier for them to know what they have to do. Aaron and I have discussed, whom we think should be doing those certain tasks. I don't know if you want me to mention any of that tonight. I can, but we have discussed who we believe should be doing a certain task, and I think it would work out the best that way. And then maybe quite possibly, and I had talked to Mike about it, we could, of course, the new person would start out at maybe the $15 an hour rate, but maybe move up the other 2 to some sort of a different rate of pay, if that was possible. But that's basically all I have. Aaron covered the rest of it quite superbly, so I really don't have anything else that I need to add.
Great. Well, the 4th day is something that people have been asking for quite a while. We used to be 5 days. We went down to 3. It's worked, but especially with the pandemic, people are just they're cleaning out. We got a lot more business. Financially, we'll be okay. We'll have to revisit, and I'll come up with the new numbers before we vote on anything. I'd like to I wanted to get, again, feedback. I wanted Aaron and Jeff to present, get a little feedback and a little direction. I'll put together some resolutions for next week. What I'm planning on, unless I hear different, is that we go to a 4-day open schedule. We already had budgeted for 4 days. We budgeted for 1 day of maintenance, 3 days of transfer station. What we're proposing is essentially making 4 days of transfer station open. So that really isn't going to impact the dollar amount greatly. I think the 745 to 345 makes a lot of sense. We used to have, when we had the scale, you had to go over the scale by 3:30, and the sign there said, nobody could go over the scale again after 3:30. This kind of helps us move. We did have a situation where a person was up top throwing their garbage, was missed that they were still there, and actually got closed in the transfer station. Handled very well. The person had a great sense of humor about it, but so I think all those ideas are great. Kate, do you want to weigh in on anything on the municipay since you deal with them already?
I did talk with Aaron about that, so I think it's a great idea. And they have been a fantastic company to work for. Anytime I've had a questions or some discrepancies where it was a learning process for me this year with taxes. Some people, it looked like they paid it, but then their accounts were rejected and you don't know it right away. And so it's been a trying year learning that, but they are really good with getting back to me right away. You call, someone talks to you right away. So I can't say nothing but good things about the company. I do want to say, with the time of the transfer station, I don't know if you would be able to stagger employees, like one person there at 7 and someone stay till 4, because I know a lot of people go to the transfer station before they go to work in the morning. So even that 15-minute difference might hinder people from being able to go there in the morning. So I don't know if that's something, maybe think about. I don't know. I could just see
Aaron
flipping out. That 15 minutes is going to make all the difference in the world to them. So
yeah, Aaron and I had mentioned that to the staff, but we kind of got the cold shoulder on that. So we kind of gave that up, because the last thing I need is if somebody's disgruntled about the time that they have to show up and then they're late is counterproductive. And that does make sense. And Aaron and I did try that, but it didn't float too well. So.
The other problem with that, with 3 people, is it's hard. You have 2 come in early, then you got 1 staying late by themselves. If you have 1 come early, then they got to deal with opening up and getting the one person served. One person can't really do the transfer station well on either end. So if we had 4 people, that would work. But if anything, I would say, well, maybe then we do open right at 7:30. And if people have to wait, they got to wait. But it's not fair to the employees to have them, be there at 7:15, but they don't get paid till 7:30. So,
absolutely. I understand that.
It's not like the town clerk where we can lock the door, or this assessor where we can lock the door. They're right there. So
yes, they are.
It's a very valid point, though, to bring up, Kate.
I think it is valid, and one of our long-term goals that Jeff and I outlined just for like maybe next year is thinking about creating some more access in the future, because I think I hear that, Kate, and I think we agree. We don't want to limit access to the transfer station.
Yeah.
The other alternative to consider is that we actually close for a half hour of lunch, because part of the problem is right now our workers are only they're there 8.5 and they're only paid for 8. And I can guarantee you probably none of them are getting a full half hour lunch. So it's an ongoing problem to try to figure out how to make that work.
So if
go ahead.
One more thing that I was trying to say, which is that we did a cool thing with the sign, which is that we made it so the hours and the days are on their own separate bar. So if we do need to change that in the future, we don't have to print the whole huge sign. We'll just have to replace this one little part. So just so you guys know, we
Right.
thought about this.
Right. I've had lots of people even suggest in summertime having later hours. Because a lot of people, it's really hard to get there after work. So that's why Saturdays are such a busy day. And I've had a lot of people say it would be helpful if they were open till 6:30 at night in the summer. I don't know if that's something in the future to even think about as well. And I know changing times can get kind of screwy for people too. So it's kind of like a gray area with that. But something to
Yeah,
think about.
Aaron and I actually had mentioned that, Kate. That's actually a good idea because, like motor vehicle on Thursday, they're open till 6:30, and I know I went there at 6 o'clock myself a couple times.
Right.
And Aaron and I actually did discuss that as being an option in the summer because there are a lot of people that you do see scurry there, especially on Saturday. It gets to be like 3:45, and between
Yeah.
3:45 and 4, it's like you want to be out of the way because they're coming in and they got to get in there. And I think maybe not on a Saturday, but maybe on a Saturday, but maybe a Tuesday or a Thursday stay open a little bit later to allow those people to get home, let's say at 5 o'clock, to be able to have time.
Well, we could
come in.
do one day a week where we open it, to say we do a 10 to 6 or something like that. I mean, that is an option. I wouldn't want to make it more than the 8.5 hours ever though, because that
Right.
gets tougher than on scheduling. So
Yes, yeah, that gets sticky. Yeah.
Kate, with
Yeah.
Municipay, would they just add this to our existing contract, or would it be a separate contract, or do you?
I know Aaron spoke with them and kind of relayed me a message, so I'm not 100% on that. I just asked for it to be separate from the clerk stuff so I can monitor it differently.
It'd be a separate account,
So
but yeah.
So Aaron would probably know better than I on that.
Okay.
I think it'd be under the same
Same contract that we
same
have already.
contract that we have
I-
already, but there's just more we can do with it. It's just them turning things off and on. And so the transfer station would have their own view, but Kate could have a master view where she could go in.
Right.
And even, if the supervisor department head wanted to have their own logins too, so they could monitor remotely, they could
Mhm.
as well.
Mhm.
And then there's reports you can run. If we do it this way, then we would actually have a very accurate idea of bagged garbage amounts, mattress amounts, tire amounts. Like you could run an annual report, a weekly report, a daily report, and you could sort transaction by item or payment amount. So it's what we use in the business world, and it really makes things a lot easier when you're looking at data too. So.
Great. B?
Yes, thanks, Mike. I think you have a lot of good ideas. One of the things I wanted to suggest is if you're going to add a Thursday, why don't you make it your odd day, your morning late and your afternoon late? Then nothing's changing to the other schedule that people are already used to. You'd be utilizing that extra day. And maybe if you didn't need it in the winter, it would make a difference. Just an idea.
That's a really good idea. Thank you.
But the other thing is, I don't care how many people you hire, there's still room enough for them to fit in that little building, and they're not outside helping people. And I think that your stuff would move quicker if you had hands out there helping people get their stuff into the bins.
Yes, that's what we're going to do. That is one of the changes that Aaron and I have discussed, and I have told Aaron whom I'm going to have in the building and whom I'm going to have outside. That will start probably right away. So that is something we are going to work towards, absolutely.
And Jeff, the other thing you have to ask these women, men, do their hands fit a broom? Can they clean up glass? Do they know how to use a broom and dustpan? Can they actually get it off the ground?
Well, I've been doing what I can to get, and like I said, with this change of actually, and like Aaron and I had talked about, with having designated individuals outside, they will be able to keep an eye on that stuff because they will be right there. So that will be their designated jobs every day that the transfer station's open. They will have no reason, unless it's, of course, pouring rain or whatever the case may be. They'll have no reason they need to be inside. We will have an inside person that handles it. If that person has to go to the bathroom, we will have the other person that knows how to run things inside fill in. But everybody will have a designated job.
Well, the reason I say that is, whose job is it to order poles? Because did not the landfill close down Saturday afternoon because there was no room in the bins?
It was pretty much an issue with the county because they only have one driver on Saturdays. Nobody anticipated that it was going to be that busy. So unfortunately, on Friday, when we looked at the bins, going by a normal Saturday, we figured we would be all right. But of course, Saturday was such a beautiful day that everybody decided to do. I think I counted 20 gas grills came in there Saturday to go into the metal bin. So of course we got overwhelmed. We got that fixed. They came in, of course, it was too late, but they came in Monday, pulled a bunch of bins, and now starting tomorrow we have all empty bins, which of course will take us through the weekend. It was just a snafu because we did call them in. Dave did call them in, but unfortunately the county sometimes just gets around to it when they get around to it.
Exactly.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, I mean,
they didn't get around to it
they were
Saturday.
called in within the normal regular time, and the county said, we can't service you. So, and I'm addressing that with them because, as well as Aaron, we also are talking to them about we have the ability to have another bin for the MSW. We're in the process of working to request another bin so we don't run into that situation again. But the fact that we had to close a little bit early on Saturday was through no fault of our employees or Jeff. It was the fact we got hit, and the county didn't come on Friday or wouldn't come on Friday and pull. And Saturdays they only have a minimal staff on, and they won't pull then either. So.
And another thing on that is there was one, one of the bins wasn't there, so there's only 3. And Jeff and I have spoken about this. We can work with the county to talk to them about how we could get ourselves on more like a regular schedule with them, because that's what some other transfer stations do. So talking to them and working with them and seeing what is it that's not working here, because it definitely and I think Jeff said that JB was working on that too. So
yes he is. Yeah.
It's a bit of a fine line, because if you do a regular schedule and then you don't have, they'll come pull anyway, and the pull charges are static, whether you're full or half full or 2/3 full. So we try to always balance it out. That's why we've always called them on an as needed basis. But if we're going to get slammed like this, we can probably have a more regular schedule, and it may bite us once in a while, but it's not going to be every charge. So,
Jeff, is there any way you see that bagged garbage in an instant like that, rather than the metal or anything? I'm guessing the bagged garbage bins were full as well.
Yes, they were.
And if that were the case, you don't have any kind of a flatbed wagon that they could have put it on? I mean, it would have been a matter of loading it and offloading it into a bin when you got it, but you wouldn't have had to stop.
Unfortunately, if we'd had something, we just didn't expect that the one driver came in there earlier in the week to pull a bin. In his mind, he didn't feel it was full enough. Didn't ask him to determine whether or not he thought it was full enough, but he wouldn't pull it, because in his mind it wasn't full enough. So by the time Friday came around, Friday was a very busy day, and then Saturday, of course, was just unreal. And
that wasn't my question. My question was, can we have a setup with the regard to the fact that we're getting told that the county has one driver, they only can do thus and so, and whatever their excuse is, let it be their excuse. But can we set up a flatbed, something like a flat hay wagon, something that can hold bagged garbage, and then it has to be put in a bin instead of
It's
turning
something-
people away.
It's something we could think about. I think the direction we're going in now, where we're having more communication with the county, and I had communication with the county today. And that's certainly something we could think about, but I think that we are headed in the right direction now with getting into what I call or what Dave calls the summer mode for the bins, where the county is more on top of things, being that they know this time of year it gets busy. That is certainly something we could have as a backup. But I'm really working towards trying to get an extra bin, which would take care of the problem, and then to just get the county more on a schedule, which is they're willing to do.
And that's all good, but it's still better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And
Oh,
so-
absolutely, absolutely. I'm just trying to.
I think your ideas are great. But I'm just looking with the extra bin and then still a backup plan, you're covered for a Saturday.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a good idea, and it's something that we can consider. To do. We just try to do our best not to, because of course we have visitors every once in a while. We find in the bin bears and stuff like that. They don't, when they make a mess, they seem to make it in the bin. It's always been I was scared. I would have done that, maybe something like that Saturday, but I was afraid to go in there on Monday and find 50 bags of garbage spread all over the transfer station. They seem to get in the bins. They make the mess in the bin, but boy, when it gets out on the ground, forget about it.
I would worry as much about a skunk too. They may be a little smaller in size, but they sure are mighty.
Yeah, they could surprise you. Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay,
But
well,
it is something to think about, B. It is definitely something to think about.
I'll work on putting
Thank you.
together the resolutions for next week with Jeff and Aaron. I think I'm gonna, we'll talk more about it offline, and come back with, thank you all for your input. Thank you for Aaron and Jeff for all the work you've done. Thank you, Kate, for your help on the municipal situation. I think these are all positive, good direction. And we'll come back to you with some resolutions next week to move us forward with this. Okay, let me get our other very patient people in here for our next discussion item.
I was looking for boots for months. I still don't have a winter jacket for this exact reason.
Just wanted to say thank you, Aaron and Jeff. That was wonderful.
Okay. So this is to talk about the Walnut Brook EEO. We have Kanan. Is it Gunduz?
Gunduz, yes, that's it, Mike.
Okay. Jeff Coyne is on, Carrie Dannenberg, and Paul, and I apologize, Paul, I don't know that I remember Paul's last name.
Jankovitz.
Jankovitz, thank you. They are the representatives. Kanan, Carrie, and Jeff are the representatives of Walnut Brook LLC. Paul is their engineer. We had the gateway meeting that we met with the Ulster County Planning Department on March 5th. I emailed you all out a synopsis of that this morning. Apologies, it was a little delayed. Rob Leibowitz thought he had sent it and hadn't. So I reached out to him yesterday. B was in attendance. Mary Lou was in attendance. Jerry Davis was in attendance. Brianna was in attendance from the planning department. Marin and Rick Jones were in attendance from the planning board. Zorian was in attendance from the planning board. We had quite the large contingent there. So I wanted to sort of move forward with our next steps. First, let me, I guess, welcome you guys. Thank you. Where we stand now is we now have their request to create the the EEO, Economic Enterprise Overlay Zoning District, for the Maybrook Lodge, former Maybrook Lodge property. And we're at the point now of us deciding if we're going to move forward with the next steps, which would be to hold a public hearing. We would have to initiate seeker, and we would then send requests for comments on the zoning change to the county planning board, to the local planning board, and to the building inspector as per the local law. And they would then offer comment. Like I said, we would initiate lead agency for seeker, and we would conduct seeker because that has to be conducted on the entire project. And then pending that, we would make a decision whether to award or not award the Economic Enterprise Overlay District designation. If we did award it, we then would send it to the local planning board for site plan review. And the applicant would apply to them for that. That would also require another public hearing for the site plan, and also another referral to the county planning board. So with all that in mind, I wanted to just sort of turn it over to Kanan and Carrie and the applicants to offer any more insight that they wish, and I can kind of walk us through then where we stand on what information we have so far.
Thank you, Mike. And I want to first thank everybody who gave their time to the Gateway meeting. That was very helpful to us to meet with the county planner and to have yourself and B present, members of the planning board. And of course, the Department of Health and Department of Transportation representatives are very helpful in helping us all understand the outline of what needs to be done, the studies that need to be conducted, the diligence. We talked, I think it was last June, when we reviewed our records. It was last June, I think, before we purchased the property, we were still considering it, about different ways that we could go about doing this and seeking approvals. And you'd mentioned the Economic Enterprise Overlay District designation, and also the planning board process. And you directed us to run everything by Code Enforcement Officer Jerry Davis once we had a plan, which we did once we purchased in August. So a couple months after we discussed, we purchased, we drew up a plan, and we went to Jerry Davis, and he referred us to the planning board, the traditional process. We went for a pre-application meeting. In that meeting, we weren't really given a chance to speak, but what we heard was that their reading, the planning board's reading of the code, was different from what we understood and our engineer architect had understood, and what Jerry Davis had led us to believe. So they explained to us that they were reading it that night as we would get less than 10 units, and that just wouldn't be a feasible project, so we'd have to abandon it. Before we did that, we reviewed our records and made note of that EEO district process. And so we did request again of Jerry Davis to take a look at it and see if it would qualify for that. And then he referred it to you guys at the town board. So we're grateful that you're reviewing it under that process now. And, one of the things that we need to understand, and this was reinforced during the Gateway meeting, there's a ton of studies that need to be done. There's a ton of science that needs to be done for us to make sure that we're all on the same page about the feasibility of the project, to make sure that we got plenty of water, to make sure that we're not impacting the community in terms of the water use, to make sure that the septic design flow is adequate, to make sure that we understand all the other aspects of a project like this that would concern a community, such as the endangered species and the traffic, and these are all things that we take very seriously. And frankly, there's no wiggle room. These are all processes that are really well laid out by the rules of the DEC, the DOH, or the DOT. We plan to comply 100% and hire the licensed experts, all of whom, by the way, that we would work with are people we've worked with in the past who work primarily in Ulster County. And that's a large cost. That's a large cost just to do those studies and to do that work. And before we embark on that and we expend those sums of money, we need to understand that we can get a 24 unit density to make the project feasible. We appreciate you looking at it, especially in light of what we understand from the Ulster County Housing Action Plan. But we've understood it, for years has been a need for a type of good quality housing for folks who work in the community, not just, there's a lot of development going on. We know that are for people who might have, quite the means to have a nice home and a large piece of land. And we understand that's a part of the community, but also we understand that people who are working in the communities are running out of options. And our plan would rehabilitate and reuse derelict structures on a property that we think can be made to look really nice. And we can make good quality housing with these structures. And we can, have people rent who are part of the community, who work in the community, and who otherwise might have a hard time finding housing. So we believe in adaptive reuse. We believe in fair housing. We believe in workforce housing for people who are essential members of the community. And we think this is a great candidate. This piece of land and these old structures can be reused in a way that hopefully creates a win-win for everybody. We look forward to working with the town, the planning board, and working together so that we're on the same page throughout to make a project that makes sense for everybody. And our main goal really is to create an example of how a town and developer can work together to address the actual needs of the community, good quality housing for working people, rehabbing existing properties, making a feasible project without relying on handouts from taxpayers to do so. In fact, to increase the tax base, and that's something that we that we're trying to do here. So we thank you for your consideration of the project, and I'll turn it back over to you for any questions that we can answer. Right now, we're really aware that there are a ton of questions that we need to answer through expensive studies, and we're willing to do that and go forward. We're ready to commit to that 100% once we understand we have the density that would make the project feasible.
Okay. So where we are now is essentially with the EEO, we would be determining the standards for that zoning district designation. It is a flexible overlay that is a project by project based on the needs of the project, based on the town's considerations. So that's what we're really considering now. Mary Lou and I went through the checklist of the requirements of what needs to be provided for that application today. We have received all the information that is required. Certainly, we're in a sketch plan phase of the site plan. That could change over time as the applicant may make changes, as other agencies review it, as the planning board reviews it. It's a concept plan at this moment. But what we would need to do in order to move this forward from the EEO standpoint is to initiate seeker lead agency. And again, like I said earlier, do the necessary referrals to the required agencies to begin that process. So in order for us to do that, we have to establish what that density that we're going to allow is on this property and for this particular project. Bear in mind that with that EEO designation, that is for this specific project. So if the project changes, if they were to walk away and somebody else came in, we are not setting the zoning standards for any project for future. So just wanted to be clear that what we're granting is a very project specific thing. So let me see if any of the board members have any questions. If anybody on the board wants me to share any documents on the screen, I can bring up the site plan. I can bring up the synopsis of the gateway meeting, EAF, whatever the board members would like. So
Mike, you say that this is just for this project, but
Correct.
as you and I both know, once we set the standard and we do this, if and when there could come a lot more of these for varying reasons, because once you open the door, it just shows others that this is a way around the planning board, and that worries me a little.
I disagree that it's a way around the planning board. To start with, the town board can review or not review an EA. An EEO is a legislative decision. We can choose. Each project is specific. We can review or not review as we choose. I don't believe Mary Lou can concur on this or not. I don't believe we even have to give a reason why we choose not to consider it. But so it doesn't open the door. It doesn't set a precedent. Again, the way the language is crafted in the EEO, it is a project specific zoning designation that we are awarding for this particular application. It doesn't remain with the land because it is only given to the land for this specific project. It is a very unique circumstance that differs from zoning designation because it is an overlay zone. So it's not going to open the door. Every application has its own merits and the pros and cons. So
Right, and if anybody else wanted to apply, you know, obviously anyone can apply for this designation at any time, but you can say no at any time. Mike's correct. You can say no for no reason at all. It just doesn't feel right to you. But everything will be very property and project specific. So just like we had the one on Lucas Avenue, which was more of like an industrial with the woodworking shop and things, you know, that was one thing. Now we have something totally different on a totally different piece of property. And you folks can, you know, decide whether you want to move forward. You move forward, if you do decide to move forward through the process, rather than just saying, look, we'll tell you right now, we're not interested. At the end of the process, you don't have to say yes.
Right.
You can say no. You know, we all know how much information we get at public hearings. So I guess the first step is to decide whether you want to move forward with it and go to that step.
And if I can add something to that, in this case, it's like us being the zoning board of appeals.
That's what I was just going to ask a question on that level.
Yeah, this is not an appeal of the zoning law. This is appeal of a legislative act of a zoning district, which the town board is in charge of. We create the zoning map. So it's an appeal to us to change the zoning on a property for a very specific reason. They have included in their application what their plans are, why they think it's important. It's up to the town board, just like the zoning board of appeals, to weigh what is being presented to us to say, is this a need for the, and we're looking on a community level. We're not looking on an applicant level. And you know, quite frankly, my own personal opinion is to get 24 units of rental housing in the town of Rochester, especially given the housing study that just came out a couple weeks ago. I think we owe it to the town to at least let the application move forward. There are many hurdles that we all have to jump. We have to do things. The applicant has to meet certain hurdles. This is by us doing the first step. If we don't do the first step, it doesn't go anywhere else. If we do the first step, there's a lot more steps that have to be done. But without us starting this project dies. And I
And
think,
I understand with the starting process, Mike, and I don't disagree with that, but what I was looking at was exactly what you said. We are the zoning board here, and Mary Lou, to get back to something that we always did zoning board, if we grant this one, and at some point later on, we say, no, we're not going to grant another one, can they Article 78 us for being arbitrary and capricious?
Okay, so first I'm going to give you the standard answer that I always give you, which is that you want to do it, B? Courts are open Monday
No.
through Friday, 9 to 5. Anybody can sue anybody for anything during those hours. And actually, you can even do it earlier now because everything's online filing.
Oh,
So courts are
okay.
open now 24/7 for filing lawsuits. That doesn't mean they're going to be successful. And that's a little bit of what I was trying to go to before, because this is very project specific. It's very parcel specific. If you find somebody who, let's say you go through all this and you say, yep, we're going to give you this EEO. And then through like Marvel magic, we have another exact parcel that's exactly the same with the same project. Yeah, then you know, there'd be some precedent, but every parcel and every project is kind of like the zoning board of appeals. It's also not, because you don't have those same very important
Oh,
criteria
I know, the 5
that you're
conditions.
very familiar with.
Yep.
Here it's different.
So I had a couple questions.
One more thing before I forget, Erin, I'm sorry. For the applicant on your EAF on page 5, number or letter C, small I, we need you to please put in the the total anticipated water usage demand per day, which I think you've mentioned, but it's not on the form. So thank
Okay.
you. Okay, Erin, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So my question is for the applicant. In your the written, I don't know what it's titled. It's from the engineer, but it's I think it's the answers to the questions A through D for our EEO.
I can put them up on the screen if you'd like, Aaron.
Sure. My question was that you refer to an agricultural overlay zone, and I wasn't sure what you were talking about when you use that term.
Our understanding is that for a brief period, somebody wanted to do a duck farm here. And I don't think it was a going concern, but they managed to achieve an agricultural overlay for that. And I think it's only been for a couple of years. I believe
It's actually, what it is the property was included in the Ulster County Agricultural District. So it's not an overlay per se. It's in the
state ag district.
In the state ag district. I'm sorry, Aaron, I have to find the right document. I found the wrong one here.
Yeah,
Is it the one called economic evaluation, maybe? That might be it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I just was curious because you cite that that was, I guess that's what I thought maybe you were referring to, is that it's in the county agricultural district. And you said that it restricts the use to yield low benefit development, which isn't my understanding of that particular parcel. So I guess I was just curious about that, because the multifamily housing is allowed in that district that the parcel's in. So that to me didn't seem completely true.
Is the benefit allowed though in the AR3? The bonus, the density bonus might not be allowed in the AR3.
In AR3?
Oh, but this is in the B zoning district.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think maybe there was a little confusion on the applicant's part about what that agricultural overlay did and didn't restrict.
because you can be in the ag district, but not be in AR3. So
Correct.
that's not, I guess that's what the
Yeah.
point I was getting at, is that it doesn't change anything about the actual district that the property is.
And this parcel was zone business and was added to the county ag district in 2019. So it's a very recent addition after it was zone B.
Right.
But it was only added because of a very specific use that the the applicant was doing, was that duck farming, and they didn't do it for a particularly long time.
Right.
So
I think, my main, and this is maybe more just general, like thank you for that, I asked the question, but I think my main reaction would be that, I understand the EEO, I understand that it's project and parcel specific. For me, there's a little bit of what comes first, the chicken or the egg, because, the applicant talked a lot about needing to do a lot of studies to make sure that this particular parcel can support this project. And for me, that's really relevant to whether, we would want to change the zoning. Then on top of that, I feel I'm still a little unclear as to whether or not the zoning needs to change, because my understanding is that this type of project is allowed in this district. So
it is allowed, but as we established at the Gateway meeting, the density would probably be 21 units, and they're asking for 24. It depends on how you calculate the density. Let me stop sharing for a moment here and I can explain this a little better. So the density in the B district, it's a 1 acre zone. So right now they have 15 point, what is it, Kanan, 15.6?
I think it's 15.6.
So that would give them 15 units in the B zone. Because it's a multifamily, they are allowed a double density. So that ups it to 30. However, there is a portion of the property in the 100-year floodplain. Let me put the map up and that will show this. Did everybody see that? I probably need to expand it a little bit, but.
No, I think it's showing your list of documents.
We're just showing that you checked it. It didn't come up yet.
Really? That's interesting because I'm seeing it on mine. Now are you seeing it?
No.
I think
Maybe I have to open it before I share screen. I don't know. Normally I can change screens with no problem.
so. I guess I feel if there's something very, very specific for B, an explanation of why and or how currently permitted uses and or regulations restrict the highest and best use of the property. I guess that's what I'm asking for in that section, is like, show
Right.
me in the code, like what's going on. And that's, I would like to have that come from the applicant or have that be in this, because the explanation that's there, I guess if I'm just going off of that, doesn't restrict this use.
Right. And we can certainly ask the update before we do a referral to the county. We could ask them to update their statement. So I guess let me go back to, so the density is allowed as 30, but taking into account that there are 5.37 acres in the flood zone. The question is, and it's not particularly answered in the density, but certainly the floodplain, we do not allow structures in the floodplain area of greater than 2 acres per structure. So that would only, in the floodplain area, that would allow 2. In the balance of the property, that would allow 10, and then double to 20 with the bonus. So they would be only at 22 units, because in the floodplain, no density bonuses are allowed. And I'm kind of reiterating what we determined at the Gateway meeting, which is why I'm speaking kind of for everybody. So we established that the density that can be allowed is somewhere between 22 and 30 units. They're asking for 24. So that is really where they're asking for greater.
Mike, how can we say between 30, because that doesn't fit in the B zone? And
Well,
if you
30
take
is in the B zone. The B zone is 15 acres times is 15 units. And because they're doing multifamily housing in the B zone, there is a density bonus allowed of double the density. So that
I get that, but they only have
30.
10, they only have 10.2 acres left. If you take
Well,
away the flood zone, you allow them to.
Understood. So my point is, though, the question arises, and maybe Mary Lou can weigh in on this, is when you're calculating the density, if they're not building in the floodplain, do they lose that density or not? So do they have double of 15 acres, or do they have double of 10 point? And that's up for, that's a discussion we have to answer. And to calculate what is the allowable density under strict standard zoning. If you're not building in the floodplain, do you lose the density? I'm throwing that out as a question. So if you remove that, then it would be, they would be allowed double the density for 10.23 acres,
yeah,
which is 20 units.
20, and then you said they're a bonus of 2. So that's 20.
It's 10, and then not a bonus of 2, you're allowed double the density. So if they're allowed 10, they would go to 20 at the double bonus.
Plus 2 for what they
Plus
could have.
2 for the area of the floodplain, which
That's
is
what I was.
right. So that's where I'm saying it's somewhere between 22 and 30, depending on what mathematical formula you use to calculate the density. We have to decide that ourselves. Now, the EEO is not written just to get waivers from a zoning law. It's also written as an adaptive reuse of the structures. And in this case, they're proposing adaptive reuse. One of the other discussions we have to have is unit number 1 is, while it's not in the floodplain, it is in an area, the floodplain on this map is the purple area. The crosshatched area, are you guys seeing the map now?
Yes.
Okay. This crosshatched area that is here with the lines going through it, in our code, we have a 100-foot setback from the high water mark of any named stream. That is a town of Rochester code. It has nothing to do with floodplain. It's a town of Rochester setback from any waterways or streams. That property is existing and it is in that zone, but that is not in the FEMA floodplain that restricts their density. The question we have to answer is, can that structure remain because it's pre-existing, or should it be removed because it's now in our 100-foot setback? Bear in mind that 100-foot setback is our own internal law. It's not a law in any other state statute. Also, parts of structure number 2 are in that, but they're proposing that that structure be removed. So a secondary part of our discussion is, can number 1 remain as is, or do they have to either, they've already said that moving it is not feasible economically or structurally because of the date of the structure. So they would have to then take it down and rebuild that unit somewhere else. So that is the second part of the discussion that we have to have as the town board. The balance of the discussion would be would go to the planning board for site plan review, and while we can make recommendations or input into it, we're not the final review authority on that. So that kind of answers the question for Aaron of why this is in front of the the town board is because of the EEO request for the zoning change. They don't have to not meet standard zoning to request this. There may be other reasons that they want to ask, which is the reuse of the buildings and these other waivers that they would need from the code. And if I forgot anything, Mary Lou, feel free to chime in there. So,
You're good.
you have any other questions, Aaron?
No, that's it.
Yeah, and I think, Kanan, if you could, before we do any, even depending on what we do tonight, if you could rewrite those 4 questions for us and sort of correct the errors in there, because there really is not an agricultural overlay zone.
Okay.
You're not really being stopped from your development, as Aaron points out. You're still in the B zone, but you are in the county ag district, which doesn't really do anything about zoning. It's more about your ability to use it in a farm capacity, which you're not proposing. Quite frankly, if you were able to be removed from the ag district, I would say you should ask that, but that only comes up once every 8 years. So you can't ask for that for another 5 years, I think. But in 5 years from now, you can ask to be taken out of the ag district there if you'd like.
Understood. Thanks for clarifying that.
So Adam, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mike. I just want to make a quick statement because again, I wasn't part of the gateway meeting. But again, I've looked hard into this and again, I know there's a ton of moving parts here and a lot of questions to be answered. I just say, when you kind of boil this all down, and again, my parents live down the street from there. I grew up down the street from the property. But, the bottom line is that we got a junkyard and an eyesore right in the middle of our town. That's, at best a duck farm. At worst, at one point, I think it was a temporary residence for transient migrant workers or something crazy like that. The advantages of helping these guys and finding a realistic way to do it is it addresses our beautification of the scenic byway. It addresses a major housing issue that we have. We're not talking Section 8 housing. We're not talking housing for city workers or folks that are coming up here on the weekend. We're talking about our residents housing. We're talking about bringing in fees, permits, and taxes. We're talking about jobs, even if they're temporary. And again, I appreciate the fact that there's a lot of moving parts to this and a lot of questions. But what it really does boil down to, and like you or Mary Lou, you can tell me if I'm wrong. Going from 21 allowable units to 24, which makes it economically viable for that, is the difference of 14%. 14% more housing on there. I would say this to everybody, if you got 14% more or less French fries, at the Kerhonkson Diner, would you even know it? So, again, I can appreciate everybody's got questions and things like that, but I would say this is one where the planning board can say yes or no, and by the law, they probably do have to say no. But as an economic overlay district and as our pseudo zoning board, we have a responsibility to take a hard look at this. And if we can find a way to say yes, and it's good for the town and it's good for the environment, and it's good for the builder, we should find a way to work hard on this. So Mike, that's everything I got tonight.
Okay. Chris, you want to add anything?
Yes, I appreciate you updating me earlier on the Gateway meeting, Mike. I was reading who was there and all of the notes. It sounded really exciting and educational for me. My main question was going to be about the floodplain and whether that was resolved. And so I appreciate you showing that map, Mike. And then finally, I think this is a unique opportunity with an economic overlay because it's not ripping down our history, it's preserving our history, it's upgrading it and embracing what came before. So I think it's a great project.
Okay. So I guess, Kanan, what I'd ask is if you guys can go back a little bit to not necessarily to the drawing board, but just go back and sort of refine those answers to A through D. Do also take another look at the EAF and correct that one missing item that Mary Lou talked about. And is the board satisfied with the sketch plan as it is right now in a sketch plan phase? Let me share it again. I'll try to shrink it a little bit so you can see the whole thing. It's in my opinion, from a planning perspective, this is considerably more than the sketch plan. So I think they have more than achieved what they are showing us. I think maybe Paul or Kanan, if you could more clearly label that zone here, and the floodplain, make sure that people understand the floodplain is the purple line and the crosshatch line is, and you could get out of the code the exact section of code that it refers to, so everybody's on the same page. Because many people, I think the planning board included, saw that flood zone label right above that and thought, oh, this is the flood zone, because many people thought that unit 1 is in the floodplain. And clearly looking at the flood maps, it is not. As a matter of fact, it is a very steep cliff right behind that going down to the stream. So it's that, and I don't want to use the word arbitrary, but that 100-foot zone that Rochester has in their code is what is your issue with unit number 1. And maybe you could elaborate in your statement, your case for why, what you've said it verbally, but if you can elaborate in writing so it's shared with all the other agencies, your case for keeping unit number 1, because ultimately that will be one of our decisions we make as the EEO. And if you could also elaborate your reasons for needing the 24 units as opposed to the, and it is 22, I was mistaken when I said 21, the 22 that are allowed under density, that would also help the discussion.
Okay.
But if we can get that all, we have another meeting next Thursday. If you can get that information to me, then I can present it to the board next Thursday for their review. And they can then decide where they want to go from that point.
Mike, I'm sorry. I've looked at this several times. I'm just trying to remember what number 1 is 1 unit, 3 is how many? I'm trying to read.
Oh, yeah. Actually, would you mind, Paul, Kanan, just walking us through what each unit is?
Sure. You know,
Could they label it too, Mike? That's
They
all I was
are
thinking.
labeled over in the.
That's
in the
what I
side.
thought they are. Okay.
Yeah. See, here's the legend. Can you see it now? I can zoom in a little bit too. So, oops, that was too far. So, unit 1, yeah, Kanan, why don't you walk people through it if you wouldn't mind?
I'd be happy to. Yeah, unit 1's an existing single family dwelling. This is an old structure. It's one of the better preserved structures, though. There are a lot of, really poor condition structures on the property. This one's not that bad. In fact, it's nice. We think it dates from around 100 years ago, maybe the 1910s. Unit number 2, it's existing, but it's not in great condition. We think it's better, safer to demolish that one. Unit 3, it's an existing structure. It looked like an activities building. It's got a nice sort of, high ceiling. It'd make a lovely one-family dwelling. Unit 4 is an existing multifamily dwelling. It's hard to tell exactly how many units they had in there prior, but we would propose making it into a 2-family dwelling. It's also a lovely older building. Unit 5 is an existing single-family dwelling, and it would stay as such. Number 6 is looks like a larger activities building, a dining hall, or something of the like. We propose converting it into a 2-family dwelling. 7 is the old motel, and that had 16 units initially. And this is something where we propose reducing that density down, making 8 more generously sized units. This building is, to be honest, I know aesthetics are always a personal thing, but it's not the most beautiful of buildings. We would really want to beautify this and make it something that people are excited about having a place in. And in our conversations with Paul, we know we could do that. So that would be 8 units. 9 is not a unit, it's the old swimming pool. And, that would just be, a swimming pool no longer. 10 is where we propose creating new units. And this would be important to making the whole thing feasible, adding this number of units. And Mike, to your point, we'll be happy to elaborate on that, as well as the case for keeping unit 1. But some conversations came up at the Gateway meeting that we thought were really valuable. Someone brought up, and it might have been Maren from the planning board, B, it might have been yourself. Someone brought up that, it would be nice if these were in keeping with the character of the older buildings on the site, perhaps a farmhouse aesthetic. And that was really great input. We agree that would be the best thing to do. We have, as you can see, they're kind of staggered right now. And the goal there is to make each one feel private so that you have some shielding. When you walked up to your front door, it doesn't feel like you're part of a large complex. It feels like you're part of a unique dwelling. But we think we can still keep that aspect to it while making it aesthetically fit nicely within the property. And that farmhouse concept was a really good one. So we've taken that to heart. We're doing our research. We're looking at other examples that exist. And that, I think, kind of brings us to, that's the whole project in a nutshell right there.
Yeah, and to fill in the board too, a little more conversation at the Gateway meeting. Those 9 units there in number 10, think of them kind of as Lego blocks. They can be moved around on the site plan. There was one discussion about making the parking smaller areas and less static. That was very well received until Jerry Davis brought up the aspect of getting a fire truck in there. And certainly, so any turn radiuses will have to be shown to make sure a fire truck can get in and maneuver through the parking area in the case of an emergency. So from a fire standpoint, this proposal is probably the better, but maybe some balance can be arrived at. They also, in one of the many things the applicant has said is that they will be hiring a landscape architect. They have not engaged one at this part in the process. And we will, there will be a much more detailed landscaping plan, architectural plan of these buildings. Right now, we're approving the concept and making any sort of comments back on concept and things like that. So, so I think I'm hearing from the board that the applicant should move forward with answering our questions, getting that information back to me as soon as you possibly can, with the knowledge that we meet again next Thursday. So if you want to get something on that agenda, I should get it at least by Tuesday if possible, so I can get it to the board in time for their review. We probably would, if we move forward, would ask you to set up an escrow account for consultant reviews and attorney fees from the town on behalf of the project. I'm thinking based on the line of the planning board's current requests that approximately $6,000 would probably be the initial escrow account request to be set up. I'm certain that will possibly need future replenishment, but that way that would establish your account so you would have it, so you wouldn't be held up waiting to deposit money from any reviews that might move forward in the future. And then beyond that, the town board would have to designate, do intent to seek lead agency. In reading through the seeker, this qualifies as a type 1 action. Interestingly enough, it probably would not if it were not in a county ag district, but because it's in a county ag district, it's limited to 25% of the classifications, and the 25% triggers it into a type 1 action. Otherwise, it might have been an unlisted action. It still would have gone through coordinated review, but it would be an unlisted action. So the type 1 action adds a little more detail to the application. It adds a little more notification requirements to the town. And it's essentially, though, it's the same seeker review. Does anybody on the board want to see anything else on the site plan? If not, or have any questions on the site plan while we're here?
Can I make a comment on the site plan?
Absolutely.
Okay, building number 1, the finished floor elevation of building 1 is one of the highest finished floor elevations of the series of buildings. And that is another reason why we think that this building should remain, because of the finished floor elevation is adequate enough to protect the building from any situation, flooding type situation. Second item is that this map that is shown right now is a companion map to another map that shows all the flood information, the FEMA floodplain information. And this is basically scaled down so it's more understandable, because the map, the companion map to this, is a little bit confusing, as to say it does identify in great detail the flood zone areas, the floodway, and so forth. And this particular map drops that background off and just shows the siting of the buildings, and is a little bit more clear as to the siting of those buildings.
Let me see if I have that map, Paul.
Well, I'd just like to, in my own opinion, I would like to save building number 1 because it is such a good building.
Mike, can't they put that in their descriptive, that the floor height and the height of the
Absolutely.
building will also help them?
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. No, this wasn't the map. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think if you could add that in your site plan description, or in the very least, if it's not on the map, put it in your narrative. That would help explain your case of why you're requesting that building 1 be allowed to remain.
Right, thank you.
Paul, do you remember the name of the map that you were speaking of? I'm trying to find it. I apologize.
I think there were 2 maps. One was, this one is identified without the FEMA information. So it's just a site map, I believe, that was part of the submittal.
Mike, the title of it is Walnut Brook LLC site plan 03.03.21.
Okay. That one. Got it. Thank you, Aaron.
So this one clearly shows the blue or teal background shows, the buildings being outside of that flood zone.
Got it. Okay, we'll make sure that both maps are then circulated, and we'll when we get to that portion, and we'll make sure to call that out as well. So, okay, if nobody has any more questions, we'll say thank you for your time, and we look forward to the new information, and we'll reconvene, reconsider that, and then go from there with next steps.
Thank you to everyone for your time. We'll definitely get you that stuff by Tuesday, and we appreciate your consideration.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on then, Mary Lou, you're next on board for the plan for operations in the event of a declared public health emergency involving a communicable disease.
Okay.
Boy, is that a mouthful. I do have it available and can share it if you'd like.
No, I don't really have a lot to discuss. I sent out the revisions to everyone. And then hopefully you all I sent out some further revisions around noontime, because we don't accept commercial waste at our transfer station, as we're not allowed to. So want to make sure that was clear. but I think that we've caught everything that we needed, the changes that you folks asked for. The only person who I heard from was Mike. He had a couple little things like adding a laborer and an operator to some of our essential employee lists. But that's it, unless you folks have any questions. If it looks good, you can pass it contingent to the union taking another look at it. I don't know if you have to send that to them. And if you did, Mike, I'm sure they.
I haven't sent this version. I wanted the
Right.
town board to sign off on it first.
Right,
What Mary
yeah.
Lou's referring to is under the state guidelines, we have to submit this to any
unions
collective
within the
bargaining
town.
agent
Yeah.
units for their okay on it. The
And
first
I don't,
one,
I don't anticipate any problems. They, we're okay last time, and we certainly haven't added anything extra that they'd need to do.
yeah.
So
He
I would
accepted
think
the
they'd
first
be
one in a
okay
matter
with
of
that.
15 minutes.
And
He
then
replied, yeah.
if you folks approve it and the union doesn't have any big issues with it, we have till April 1st to get it done. And of course, our next meeting is April 1st. Part of getting her done, as they say, is having it go out to the employees as part of the employee handbook and having it posted everywhere, in all of our facilities by April 1st. So, it's on the edge. We could make Mike run around and post it everywhere after next week's meeting if we have a problem. But if you're okay with it, it would be a good idea to pass it tonight so we don't have to make Mike run
That was
around.
going to be my question. Are you recommending this evening?
Yes, I am. I most definitely am.
Yeah, and with that, I put together a recommended resolution. So this would be I'll make the motion. The Town of Rochester Town Board adopts the policy plan for operations in the event of a declared public health emergency involving a communicable disease as dated March 25th, 2021. Actually, Mary Lou, was this dated March 22nd?
Actually, it is dated March 22nd,
So
but
we'll change that to March 22nd. And then,
or you can just put a 5 on the plan and we can.
no, we'll do it as dated March 22nd. It's
Okay.
easier to change the paper than the PDF.
Okay.
But I need to add in there contingent at the end of that motion, contingent on acceptance by the IBW local 353.
Well, it's not really acceptance. I would say review,
Okay.
because if they have recommendations, we have to get back to them.
Okay. So
we don't have to accept the recommendations, but we have to answer them, kind of like the Ulster County Planning Board.
So how about we'll say then, the Town of Rochester Town Board adopts the policy plan for operations in the event of a declared public health emergency involving a communicable disease as dated March 22nd, 2021, period. The town board directs the supervisor to submit this to IBW local, what local? Oh, Jeff's off. It's
Local number.
Is it
363.
Thank you. My local is 353, which is why I always confuse them. Thank you. IBW local 363, and to post the document.
You don't need all the posting of
I don't
the
need all
document.
that.
That's
Okay,
something
so
you
we can
have to
say-
do by.
So the second sentence would just be, the town board requests the supervisor circulate a copy to IBW local 363
For review. Yep.
for
I'll
review.
second.
Thank you.
Did you get all that, Kate?
Yeah.
Yep. Roll call vote, Kate.
Councilwoman Allen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hagen Depew,
Aye.
Councilman Hewitt, Councilman Paddock,
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
Aye. Next item I put on for discussion, it was a possible resolution. I submitted to you the Association of Towns sort of newsletter that they did regarding the New York State 2021-2022 budget. There were a number, I sat in on a PowerPoint by the Association of Towns attorney by the way, if you ever get a chance to listen to her, she is hilarious. She's so much fun at presenting. And
Who
anyway,
did you have?
Sarah,
Okay.
the Association of Towns main attorney that they use.
Now that's Lori.
Okay, well, this is her assistant then, Sarah.
Okay.
There are a number of things that the Assembly and the Senate and the governor have different versions. I didn't know, we have occasionally in the past sent supporting or opposing resolutions to any budget items. The budget is supposed to be done by March 31st. Whether it will be or not be is another story. I'm betting not, the way things are going these days. So we don't have to do any action tonight, but if you want to look through the PowerPoint, and if anybody feels strongly one way or the other about bringing a motion to the board to support or in the PowerPoint presentation, there are some that are highlighted green, red, and yellow. The green ones are the ones the Association of Towns says is the best version. The red obviously is the worst version. The yellow is the in-between cautious version. So she did walk through everything and they said what they're lobbying for if we wanted to add anything else to it. So next we have 4 resolutions that I put on the agenda to do tonight. The first is involving the local champions grant contract, and Aaron, it's probably appropriate that you make this resolution since you brought this to us. Do you mind reading it and making the resolution?
Nope. So I'd like to make a motion that the Town of Rochester Town Board authorizes the supervisor to sign the grant agreement ID number 21-0109, accepting funding in the amount of $8,765 from the Lifeboats Hudson Valley Fund of the New World Foundation in support of participation in the Local Champions Program, a 1-year ICLEI subscription, and first-year domain registration and hosting for standalone Squarespace website.
Okay. Do you have a second on that?
I just seconded.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Any questions or discussion? This is for acceptance of the money. We've already approved applying for it. We received it. This is just authorizing me to sign the contract that I supplied to you.
This is for Madeline, correct?
This is for Madeline, and the additional 765, because the original grant amount was 8,000. That is to pay for the ICLEI subscription and the first-year domain registration for the website. Those are recommended by the organization to help in the process, and they're willing to pay for it. We're under no obligation to continue the subscription. The registration, which is $165, we do have to do 1 more year. So we will have to then pay $165 next year to maintain the registration for a second year. But out of all that, that's the only thing that we have to pay as a town. So, Kate, roll call vote.
Councilman Anawen?
Aye.
Councilman Hagen Depew?
I say aye, but I don't like the 165 for the second year.
Councilman Hewitt?
Aye.
Councilman Paddock?
Aye.
Supervisor Baden?
Aye. Okay, next resolution, and I'll go ahead and make this. The Town of Rochester Town Board authorizes a change in hours worked per week for the position of code enforcement clerk part-time from 21 hours per week to 20 hours per week due to job classification requirements under civil service law effective April 4, 2021. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, the reason for this, we moved our temporary clerk to a part-time position as of January 1st. We moved her from 15 hours a week to 21 hours a week. The clerk's job is a civil service position, and I was mistaken. I thought we could go as high as 3/4 before they were deemed full-time. I was told as soon as they get above half, they are deemed full-time, and that makes it a competitive position. And there already is a list. So if we want a 21-hour person, we have to take off the list, the existing list. if we change her back to 20 hours, we can continue with her as a part-time, non-competitive position. So that is the reason for that change. Are there any other questions?
This April 4th starts the pay week, correct?
Correct. Correct. And I did that then. They brought this to our attention a couple weeks ago. I delayed it because of we have had some staffing people out there due to illness. We had to have the office covered, but by April 4th, we will be back on track. So, and she is aware. I've told her that. I've told Jerry that, and told him that if he finds he needs another part-time person, we can certainly discuss that down the road if we think we need it. But it was just a mistake and a misunderstanding on my part of what we couldn't do.
Mike, what about making her a deputy clerk with other job titles or other duties by the town board? That's just a way around it.
Yeah, I think they would catch on and say, why is your deputy clerk working in the assessor, I mean, in the code enforcement office?
Okay.
I don't know. We could do this for now and consider that. Mary Lou's not going to weigh in public. Okay.
We'll
Roll call.
talk.
She's got her hand over her
Councilwoman
mouth.
We'll
Allen,
talk outside.
Roll call vote, please, Kate.
Councilwoman Allen,
Aye.
Councilman Hagen DePew,
Aye.
Councilman Hewitt,
Aye.
Councilman Paddock,
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
Aye. Next resolution is a resolution that I'm going to make. I'm withdrawing the local law 3 of 2021. Recommend resolution, the town of Rochester Town Board cancels the public hearing for local law 3 of 2021, amendment to chapter 125 subdivision scheduled for April 8th, 2021, and request the town clerk post notice of cancellation on the town website and notify the Ulster County Planning Board requesting removal of the referral for comment submission.
I'll second.
I did this based on the reply back from the local planning board. I do still feel that there is a problem and it needs to be fixed. And Mary Lou was present in the same planning board meeting that I was in, where they said, quote unquote, the town board really needs to fix this. And which is why I move forward with this. The letter from the planning board indicates that they're going to recommend that this be reviewed by the zoning review committee and that the changes be made then, and that they will deal with the issue. There has been one other application that it's affected, so we're now up to 4. And what it does is it makes simple lot line adjustments or minor subdivisions become major subdivisions and potentially opens the door for longer review process. But they seem to be okay with giving waivers and it seems to be working. So I'm going to withdraw that local law, and that's all I have to say on it. So roll call vote.
Councilman Allen, Councilwoman Hagen DePew,
Aye.
Councilman Hewitt,
Aye.
Councilman Paddock,
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
Aye. So with that being said, since we now have another day free, I'm asking that we set a special workshop meeting. The Town of Rochester Town Board sets a special workshop meeting for Thursday, April 8th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. via video conference, and request the town clerk post legal notice. Mary Lou, can I do it for the video conference now?
Right now, we're only good until the 28th of this month.
Okay, so it'll say,
And
yeah.
yeah, and I'm not really sure if it's gonna be renewed or not. I think it will be, because we can't really, we still wouldn't be able to have full capacity. But
Well, I know some of the executive orders expire March 31st too, and they're not renewable. So I'll modify the resolution then, or I'll amend the resolution to say via video conference, or to be video conference pursuant to governor executive order, and I don't have the number in front of me, but it's the same one as that allows us to have the meetings by video conference.
Mike, what's the purpose?
well, let me finish making the resolution and then or at the the Harold Lipton Community Center, Tobacco Road, Accord, New York. So there's the resolution. Aaron seconded. The purpose is, if you go to the very next item on the agenda, there's about 15 pending discussion items that it's already 8:30 tonight. I don't think you want to spend 15 or more time going through all these. This is just an ongoing list of things that are kind of pending that we need to all talk about. We can certainly talk about some of them next Thursday, but the regular meeting, there's an awful lot to do. So my purpose is to talk about some of these things, the building condition survey, the short-term rental law. Many of these need a half-hour conversation or so. So that's my purpose.
Quick question about the American Rescue Plan. How do we re-budget for the additional money?
Well, I sat through a webinar today on the American Rescue Plan. Well, let's vote on the resolution first, and then I'll go into the next topics. So, Kate,
Councilwoman Cohen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hagen DePew,
Aye.
Councilman Hewitt,
Aye.
Councilman Paddock.
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
aye. Okay, now we'll move on. So we'll start with the American Rescue Plan. With the American Rescue Plan, which was the stimulus money that was approved by the federal government, Senator Schumer's office notified all the elected officials in all the municipalities that there is money appropriated for us with very strict limitations on how it can be used. We are assigned at this moment $0.79 million, which is $790,000. Before we get too excited about it, though, there are very strict limitations of what you can and can't use it for. But of course, those limitations in the language of the, I started to say local law, in the language of the legislation, are the only thing that's clear about them is that they're very vague. The Treasury Department is now tasked with taking that legislation and creating a set of standards or guidelines of how that money can be used. One thing that is very specific in it, you can use it for any COVID-related expenses. You can use it as a payback for any COVID-related revenues any revenues you lost because of COVID. How you're going to prove that and what it is, all that is to be determined yet. Another thing it can be used for is any water, sewer, or broadband projects. They don't say anything about highway, they don't say anything about bridges, they don't say anything about, so those three are specifically named. And then the fourth is you can award grants to and I actually, if you'll bear with me, I can put up the slide from the PowerPoint presentation today, which was very clear, and I just don't want to misspeak. But essentially, where I'm headed is we don't really know how it can be used yet. What we do know is that within 60 days after the legislation was signed, which was March 11th, it has to be provided to New York State. And then they have to provide it to us within 30 days after that, half the money. However, they can get a 30-day extension just for asking, and they can get another 30-day extension if they ask a little nicer in writing. And I'm paraphrasing because that's really what it is. So let me get, can you see my screen? Okay. Sorry. There we go. So these are the 4 ways you can use funding. To respond to a public health emergency or its negative impacts including assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits, or to assist impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. Now, the attorney for the towns points out that you're not allowed to give money to individuals as a town, but this is saying you can provide assistance to households. So she points out that clearly there needs to be clarification of how that can be done. Number two, we can provide premium pay to workers performing essential work during the public health emergency, or we can provide grants to eligible employers that have eligible workers who perform essential work. The only problem is they don't define eligible employers anywhere. They do employ eligible workers though, and that is defined in the section. Number three is, what does premium pay mean? And they clarify, it can be up to $13 per hour paid to an eligible worker in addition to their wages, and applies to all work performed during the health emergency, and it can't exceed $25,000 with respect to any single eligible worker. And number three, this was the revenue section. For the provision to the extent of reduction in revenue due to the public health emergency relative to revenues collected in the most recent full fiscal year. So you'd have to look back at last year, see how much you got. And even if you budgeted for more this year, if you didn't, you still have to make it relative to your last year. And then number four is what I was talking about, the water, sewer, broadband infrastructure. The money has to be spent by December 31st, 2024. There is also a section of it talks about, sorry, I'm trying to find the beginning. There's a 75% funding cap. So the amount of money we receive can't exceed 75% of our most recent budget as of January 27, 2020. We will not fall, our budget is more than 75% of the amount of the money we're receiving. So we will not be any issue. And then they have to, once they supply the first half, they have to supply the second half within 1 year of the date of receipt of the first half. So all that being said, we don't really know what this means, what this doesn't mean yet, except at some point we will be getting a check and we're going to have to figure out how we're going to spend it. But since we don't really know the rules yet, all we can do is come up with some theories and some very, very vague ideas right now. So
lots of really vague ideas, Mike. So I'm really excited to talk about that.
I mean, if you want to take a few minutes and brainstorm a couple general concepts, obviously broadband, there's many people needing broadband in our community. But one question is, do we want to keep funding Spectrum, who keeps doing things the same way over and over again? Or would we want to take a chunk of it and try to invest in some type of other broadband? Remember, we are under a Cablevision contract with Spectrum, not a broadband contract. So we can theoretically provide broadband in our community outside of Spectrum without violating our agreement, but we would have to come up with a way that it would work for a lot of people. So
now Spectrum is AT&T, right?
No, Spectrum is Cablevision.
All right, so we could use Verizon or AT&T.
Yeah. But I mean, there are many other companies that are just, Warsing is really exploring this new satellite program through Elon Musk that they're putting satellites up every day. There's more satellites going up, and it's going to become very cheap satellite technology that can work in areas that normally have satellite challenges. So it might be something to explore. I have no idea of what the costs are. I don't think anybody knows at this point, but Spectrum, in order to help one person, could eat up $100,000 of that money for one household. It may not be very cost effective to get to the most people.
I think we all have ideas maybe about how the money can be used.
Yeah.
I just thought last week, because I was on a call about the universal basic income that the county is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Our town did a mini universal. It's not universal if it's mini, but if we did a small UBI pilot, we could be studied at the same time the county is being studied. Because they hired Penn State, I think, to study.
They did. They hired Penn State to manage that program for them. And that program is costing what the county is doing is 100 people who have applied, who met minimum income standards, are going to be randomly selected. There were over 6,400 people who applied, but 100 will get a $500 a month minimum income for 12 months. And then there are 100 other people who are being studied who are going to be tracked but are not getting it. And the comparison of what that $500 a month does to a person's lifestyle and the person's living, not just lifestyle, but person's living standards versus the person who's not getting it. It basically is a study, but in the process, it's awarding $6,000 to 100 people. So it's $60,000 of money. It's not a sizable amount of money, and that's what the county is doing.
I think
What's
it's
that?
1,000. Isn't it 600?
6,000 times 100, 600,000. Thank you. It's still 600,000. Yeah, thank you.
And an anonymous donor gave it from their foundation, so the county's not even paying for it.
County's not paying for it. No, and Penn State is doing the study for free because they're using the data research. So.
And also they did the Stockton, California UBI study, so they're
Yeah.
continuing that research.
Yeah. It's an interesting idea, but there's a lot of possibilities out there. I don't think we can even start to really think, about any of them until we really know what this all means. But
I agree, but I want to pitch something. If we can do it, I want everyone to think about it.
Sure.
Which is, well, I like the ideas on the table. I like the idea of broadband. I like Chris's idea. The other thing that I've been thinking about, and I think a lot, that the American Rescue Plan is sort of an extension of the CARES Act, sort of. So I did a little bit of research on this. So this might be allowed, we'll have to wait, but to invest in software and technology for our town so that we have more updated systems that would help our departments run more efficiently, from record keeping to online communications to remote working capabilities. That was something that I came across, and I think if we could use the funding for that, wouldn't be all of it, but it could really, really help unburden some of our very overburdened departments. And it's very exciting to think about, like, if we could do that, because we could really improve our interaction with our residents too. And that's something that is needed. So I just wanted to put that out there as something I've been thinking about. And if
it's
we
a good idea. I think we'd have to figure out how we can make that be COVID related, but.
Yeah, aren't we paying Fish Solutions to do some of that now?
They're doing like I'd say the like hardware side. This would be more like programs,
Right.
Implementation of programs that would then could also be on the back end, and our website would link up to them.
Fish
So
Solutions would tell us which programs are the ones we should use. So Fish is providing us guidance and physical labor with installation of Wi-Fi's and things like that, and installation of new computers. We still have to buy the computers. We still have to buy the software. So what Aaron's proposing is new equipment, new software, essentially.
not equipment. It would be
Software.
Software
Yeah.
technology that would be used mostly. If we did it, I'd want to work very closely with Kate, Code Enforcement Office, to like, we'd want to solve the issues, but so.
I was laughing at Kate because she's got her go forward going back there. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
I like the idea. We just have to find out if that would fly under the radar for the, I don't know if it would or wouldn't.
Right.
Yeah. Because, many people had very specific questions today for the attorney, but she said, till the Treasury Department comes out with the guidance, we don't know.
Well, maybe once we
Be glad
get,
we're not a village. If we were a village, we'd have no idea right now how much money we were getting because it's all left in the hands of the towns.
well, I think once we get the guidance, it might be good to have like a special meeting where it's not
Absolutely.
a super long meeting, but we could,
Yep.
you know, talk about it more specifically.
Some communities are opening up the questions to the public too of what,
That's-
you know.
That's
and-
what I was going to say. When we get guidelines, we could maybe do a public hearing.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think we might have, I don't know. We'll have to find out if public hearing may be required anyway to spend the money in general. But more than a public hearing, I'm thinking of like a public brainstorming session to just
Yeah.
let them come up, or even a way to, the ideas can be submitted to us.
And then the other one I thought is just a water sewer feasibility study. Since we're getting development in the hamlet, but
Well, and we do, you know, for Accord, Kerhonkson too, there's the possibility of talking to Wawarsing and connecting into their system. We did start exploring that a couple years ago. It kind of all got put on hold because then Wawarsing moved forward with redesigning their whole system. But potentially we could still reopen that conversation for that section of Rochester that isn't in there, that is near their sewer district, but not in it.
Webster Avenue.
Webster Avenue, around the school area.
Sheldon.
Yeah. There's about, I think I had counted, there was 28 or 29 homes there. And it was more about water. Wawarsing did say water was probably more feasible than sewer at the time. But they said water was probably very feasible. So, what's the board's feeling? It's 8, almost 9. Do you want to talk about any of these other items or you want to put them off till next week?
How about just Minnewaska request?
Okay, so the Minnewaska Park Preserve request, we received a letter that I submitted to all of you from the head of the Minnewaska Park Preserve, Eric Humphreys, requesting that we do the constable patrols again, starting May 3rd, or excuse me, April 3rd through, I forgot what through October. Maybe it was even November. That being said, he has, at my request and at other people's requests, we are putting together a meeting on the 8th with, he's invited the state police, the sheriff, myself, Rich Miller will be there. Adam, did you, as the liaison of the constabulary, I had forwarded the request to you too. To just sort of talk about this as a group. Now, we did get the funding from the county for the, that planning project, but that will be nothing that will come out of that for this year. They will do a study of the overall corridor and decide it's not just about parking, it's about a lot more things. They are looking at doing some redesign of the hairpin curve there because it is the largest source of accidents in all of Ulster County. So they already were discussing that on their own with DOT. So, it's more just informational to let you know that request exists. If we are going to honor it, I would ask for a resolution next week that we staff it for 2 people for Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. From the 8 hours that we did last time, the 9 a.m. to I think we did 8:30 to 4:30, I believe. I'd go back and look at what we did.
Like, was that 2 cars, 2 people, or just 2 people?
2 cars, 1 person in each. I just don't see the need to do 4 people, and roughly the cost, if the board wants to know what the cost of the town is approximately $225 a day plus the cost of the fuel. And that's for 2 people. So it's essentially about $500 a weekend, $250 a day, I would say, and that's a high end estimate. I plan to put a resolution together for next week. We can certainly have more discussion next week if we want. The meeting won't take place. We could also do it for a period of time, not for the whole time, and do it for a period of time and then revisit it as we go. We could even do it on a month-by-month basis if we wanted.
Mike, I thought at some points they used 3 people.
They did at one point. They had a third person at the gate. I'm kind of waiting to have the meeting with Eric. You know, we were helping because they had major parking issues. Their parking lot is now open to full capacity. So we won't have the same pressures that we had last year. They have, you know, considerable number of more parking spaces now. Quite frankly, I think they should be supplying somebody at the gate, not us. They have park police and they're included in this meeting. You know, if they can't get their own park police there, we shouldn't be doing that. But having the patrols, I think, was very valuable and helpful.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yep.
I wonder if we should do that resolution on our meeting on the 8th, since you're having the meeting on the 8th, and that way, if something changes on that.
The only reason is he was asking for the 3rd to start.
Oh, okay.
April 3rd, is the first Saturday. He was asking for the coverage.
Okay,
We could do a resolution to allow coverage for the first weekend and then have the meeting and do another resolution for the remaining.
we could pencil it in that way. If something changes from that meeting, we would be able to.
He had trouble. He was trying to schedule the meeting for the end of March, but people's schedules didn't match up, and the 8th became the only day that everybody. There's about 16 people, and we're going to meet in person at the Mohawk Center, not Mohawk, excuse me, Minnewaska Center. So trying to get everybody coordinated was difficult.
Mike, we never answered the question last year, and Mary Lou was going to check tickets, multiple tickets to come to either, I don't know how it goes, if it goes to the court clerk or the town clerk. I'm still not clear of that, or I don't remember. Are we still looking into that? We kind of let it.
Nope, I did get something from the Association Towns, and I was going to get that to you, and I will be. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, it's my understanding we can't without whatever Mary Lou is getting. She was looking into it because the law was not clear whether we could do it with a constabulary. With the police department, we could establish, if I remember correctly. And Mary Lou was looking into the answer, and she did get that for it. She'll get that.
Yeah, I got some things from Association of Towns, and it was back a bit. And I think I was going to give you that at the January meeting that I missed because my back would not allow me to sit.
So that's the answer. But currently, we cannot issue tickets to a vehicle. We can only issue them to a person.
So thank you for the reminder, Bay. I appreciate that.
Okay. So with that, we're almost at the 3-hour mark. Just bear in mind, there've been a lot of comments about the short-term rentals. I would like to spend a good chunk of time on the 8th talking about that and any potential changes to that resolution. And then see if you think, if anybody has any of these agenda items here that they really want on next Thursday's meeting, shoot me an email, let me know. And I'll put those on for discussion next Thursday, and then I'll put everything else on for the 8th. So with that, I guess if nobody has anything else to bring up, yep, go ahead.
I said motion to adjourn.
Oh, thank you. Chris?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Second, got it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Before you go off, Adam, is that whiteface?
What's that?
Your
Behind
background,
you.
is that whiteface?
Oh, yeah, it is. Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
the light popped here tonight. I got a light in the front. I'm looking like ridiculous. I just
Well, I
put that-
kept waiting for you to move over to see if I could see the tower. Okay, now I know it's whiteface. And also no mentioning French fries when we have, meetings and we haven't had dinner.
you can tell I'm starving.
I second that. I second that.
Okay.
Everybody have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.